Hey everybody, welcome to class. My name is Brad Smith and we're going to be editing portraits in Pixlr E today. If you're not familiar with the rest of my tutorials, please take a look at my playlist. I've got a number of different editing tutorials. See here, this is a little bit more advanced because we are using 6 different tools in the Pixlr E program. We're going to be using the fill tool, clone stamp, brightness, saturation, a little bit of spot healing brush, and then we're going to close it out with some dodge tool. Now, you may not need to use all of these tools to make your portraits better. I like to use them all, but do what you can, and if you're starting to use these tools, you will find that you do need to practice this. But after a little bit of practice, you're going to find that you can take your portraits from average to pretty remarkable in a pretty short amount of time. And what's so great about Pixlr E is that it's free. So let's go ahead and get started. So you can see on this page that I've got a number of images that I've modified. The images at the top are the originals, and the ones at the bottom, those are the modified versions. Now, I did a pretty good job of getting these images in camera. I used my camera in automatic mode. I used a little bit of natural light in a bright room, and I used one extra light source with a lamp. Now, if you're interested in how I took these images, I did it very DIY style, and yeah, I think they turned out pretty good. If you want to see how I did that, you can go ahead and watch this video on taking portraits in automatic mode. I'm going to link that video here at the top. Now, we're going to get into how to modify these images. We're going to take them from fairly good images to very good images. I need to pick one of these images, though, to kind of demonstrate how I did this. I'm going to choose this image here. And I think this is a good one because there's a number of issues that I found with this image. First, it's slightly underexposed. I needed to fill the background in. There's some open space where it's not completely white. I've got this big shadow here behind my subject. And then there's some modifications that I did on my subject that I think would be really helpful. Again, they're not really apparent until you really dissect the image and you really kind of look at it from a technical standpoint, but you can see that there are some tweaks that can be made that could make this image a lot better. So let's go ahead and get started by putting our image in Pixlr E. So now that my image is in Pixlr E, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to rotate this image so that it is right side up. The second step is to go into my navigation bar here, and I'm just going to kind of navigate out a little bit. I want to be able to see the whole image. Now, the first thing I want to correct about this image is going to be the brightness. It's a little bit underexposed. I want to bump this to about 30%, make it about 30% brighter. That will get me the exposure that I want. And there we go. That is the brightness that I want. Now, I notice that I have this little space here on the left side of the image that needs to be filled in. I also have some areas under the dress, and I didn't quite fill those areas in with my white backdrop. Now, I can crop the image, but I don't want to lose that dress. I want to be able to see my whole subject here, and I kind of like the way that she fills the frame. So the best way to do that first is get my backdrop to be the brightness that I want it to be. I want it to be a little bit whiter, especially if you're putting this image on a white page, maybe a website where it's got a white background. So what I'm going to use is the fill button for this. Now this fill button looks like a paint can that is spilling. It's on the left hand side, kind of near the bottom of these tools. I'm going to select that tool, and then I'm going to change the opacity, and I'm going to change the tolerance on this. Usually the default is 100. I'm going to make this 20, and I'm also going to take my tolerance down to 20. I'm just going to basically select an area on the backdrop and make it a little bit whiter, and that way if the tolerance is down, I'm only going to select sort of that area of the picture. It's not going to brighten anything else. It's not going to brighten my subject. It's not going to brighten the shadow. It's just going to make that area a little bit brighter. And once my area is the whiteness that I want it to be, then I'm going to clone stamp it, and I'm going to move it all around the rest of the white backdrop. So all I have to do is just now select this clone stamp, and I'm not really worried about opacity. I want it to be completely white. Then I'm going to select that area that I want to, again, replicate everywhere. So I'm just going to push the shift button, and then I'm going to select that area of the backdrop, and then I'm just going to go around all of this backdrop, and I'm going to fill it in. So I'm going to fill in this area around her dress, and I'm going to fill in the area around the outside of the frame. I'm going to make sure that it is completely white, But by doing it this way, you're also allowing yourself to have a little bit of that halo, that darker halo around your subject. So it does look as though there is a little bit of distance between the backdrop and the subject. And that's what we want. We actually want to create a little bit of a halo, a little shadow outline. That way it doesn't look like she's just part of a green screen. It actually looks like there is a bit of a canopy there. But when I get a little bit closer to, let's say, the dress area or my subject's face or any of that, I'm actually going to want to take it back down. I want to take the brush size back down, and I also want to take back maybe the opacity as well. Okay, so our white background is looking pretty good at this point. We've got a couple more tools to go over. The next step is to saturate her a little bit. So I'm going to push on this Adjustments tab and find saturation. Now saturation allows the colors to be slightly more vibrant. I don't want to do too much of this. A little bit goes a long ways. So I'm going to show you what 30% more looks like. Obviously that kind of creates a little bit of an orangey hue around her face. We don't want that. What we want to do is just increase this about 10%, and that will give us a little bit more color. Now once we've done that, the next two steps are just to modify just the area around her face a little bit. So I'm going to use the spot healing brush, and this is to kind of get rid of some of the lines around her eyes. Now I know this is a strange thing to do with a toddler, but we want to do this for most subjects. Most subjects have some lines around their face, maybe some blemishes, maybe some red marks. I had one piece of advice to give you about the spot healing brush is to make the brush the same diameter as the blemish that you are removing. You don't want to make it any larger, and you don't want to make it any smaller. Usually just surround the area that you want to replace, and that usually does it. Again, I'm just going to get rid of the lines around her eyes a little bit, but you don't have to do much. Obviously, this is a toddler, so there's not much to do here. One of the things I want to do is to give her eyes a little bit more twinkle. So what I'm going to do as my last step is to use the dodge tool. Now the dodge tool is here on the left hand side of my tools. In this program, it's a circle that's split into sort of a dark and light side. We're going to be using lighten. And then in the range over here, we're just going to use midtones. Now the midtones is going to allow me to just lighten the areas. I'm going to lighten the areas around her eyes and the white of her teeth. And to finish it off, I'm actually going to use highlights. Now highlights will allow me to give that little bit of a sparkle. I want to make sure that the brush is a little bit smaller, but a strength of about 30%. And using highlights will allow me to get a twinkle. Usually this is just a one tap, maybe two taps, but one tap on the mouse will allow you to get that twinkle to be a little bit more highlighted. And that is going to conclude everything that we need to do to modify our portraits, you guys. Again, don't rush it, take your time, go over this process a couple times, and once you've put these steps to memory, you're going to find that these steps are very easy to do, and you can really improve your images quite a bit. Good luck with it, and I will see you in the next video.